All right, let's talk about one of the most brilliant and honestly, one of the most tragic stories in all of sports, the life of Diego Maradona. For this explainer, we're going to look at his incredible story through the lens of a really interesting book, Case Studies for Young Learners by Mehmed Abd-Illah. It frames his life as this powerful, unforgettable lesson, and that's exactly what we're going to unpack. Okay, so you've got to picture this. It's the summer of 1986. The entire planet is just glued to their TVs. It's the World Cup final, the biggest sporting event there is. And in the middle of all of that, with literally billions of people watching, all the eyes, all the hopes, all that immense pressure, it's all focused on just one guy, Diego Armando Maradona. So how did he even get to that point? Well, that brings us to our first chapter, the world at his feet. This is all about the making of a global icon. And that final, it was against Germany, an incredibly tough team. You could say they were the strongest powerhouse in Europe at the time. But, see, Argentina had something Germany didn't. They had a football wizard, a player whose skill just seemed magical, you know? Like he could do the impossible. And with him leading the way, Maradona made the dream come true. They won. And just like that, with that one win, he became more than a champion. He became a global icon. It felt like everyone on the entire planet loved this guy. And back home in Argentina, he was treated like a national superhero. No question. He had reached the absolute top. Now, his fame with the national team was one thing, but his legend, that was really forged at the club level. In one very specific city in Europe, he wasn't just going to be a hero. He was going to become a king. This part of the story is the King of Naples, a legend is born. So his European journey kicks off in '82. He plays for Barcelona for a couple of years, but the really history-making move, that happened in 1984. He transfers to a small Italian club, Napoli. And you have to understand, this wasn't some giant powerhouse team. They were overlooked. And that one decision, well, it changed everything. And to give you an idea of the scale of his arrival, look at this number. 75,000. That's how many fans packed into the stadium just to welcome him. This wasn't for a match. This was just to see him for the first time as a Napoli player. The entire city was just absolutely electrified. And boy, did he repay that welcome. Thanks to Maradona, this little club, Napoli, became one of the most famous in the entire world. He pretty much single-handedly dragged them to major titles in what was, at the time, the toughest league on the planet. He wasn't just a player for them. He became a legend of the town. And the level of adoration, it went way beyond just being a fan. He became part of the city's very fabric. They were painting huge murals of him on ancient buildings, like he was some kind of saint. Parents were literally naming their newborn children after him. To them, he was basically a god. So he had everything, right? The trophies, the fame, the love of millions. He was on top of the world. But there's always a but, isn't there? The really tough question was, how long could a hero actually stay on the podium? And that question, well, it leads us right into the next and really tragic chapter of his story, a hero's tragic fall. This is where we learn the painful lesson that sometimes talent, even genius-level talent, just isn't enough. Yeah, all that success, it came with a huge price. He got involved in some really serious personal problems, illegal troubles, including drug use. And all of this just started to eat away at his career. He began missing games, skipping practices. The club started hitting him with massive fines. You could just see the cracks starting to appear. The real breaking point, though, came at the 1994 World Cup. Maradona failed a drug test and was sent home in disgrace. And, while people weren't totally surprised given the rumors, it was still just shocking to see this icon, this king, get kicked out of the very tournament that he once basically owned. It was just a moment of pure tragedy. But his story doesn't just end there, in tragedy. In fact, his legacy gives us one of the most powerful lessons in all of sports, a lesson for generations of athletes that came after him. And that's our next section, the enduring Maradona legacy. And this is really the key takeaway. The generations of players that followed him, they learned as much from his failures as they did from his success. They realized that greatness isn't just about talent, that magical ability to touch a ball like nobody else. It's also about the mentality. It's about the discipline you need to stay at the top. I think this chart really drives the point home. You can see the huge difference in how long these athletes stayed in their prime. Maradona's was like this short, brilliant explosion. But then you look at modern icons like Messi and Ronaldo, they clearly learned the lesson. They have maintained their peak for an incredibly long time. So how they manage that? Well, simply by making good choices. They've extended their prime for, almost 15 years now. And they did it by maintaining incredible self-discipline, taking amazing care of their health, and really focusing on their families. These are the exact areas where Maradona unfortunately really struggled. So, when you boil it all down, the crucial point is this. Maradona reached the top. I mean, he reached a height that maybe no one had ever seen before. But he just couldn't stay there for long. And that's the other half of the battle. And that leaves us with one final big question to think about. When you look at a life with such incredible highs and such devastating lows, you really have to ask yourself, is genius just a gift you get to use? Or is it also a huge responsibility that you have to manage?